Hi there. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my philosophy of music. Before I get started, I was thinking about how challenging this video blog thing is. I would so much rather just write a blog. But I think that was kind of the point, and I think it's really important that we do things like this that challenge ourselves. It reminds me of when we have our students, in my case, college students and community adults, in our classrooms, and we ask them to try something new, something they're not familiar with. And that's the way that I feel about this. And so I came in fully intending just whatever happened the first take, I would do it, but then I couldn't get Kaltura to upload, and so now I'm doing it on my iPhone. So technically this is the second take, but here we are. You know, the younger generation all feels so much more comfortable in video than I do, or than a lot of people I think of my generation. I'm Gen X, and definitely millennial and Zoomers especially. They kind of grew up with all these screens that to me is like, what? And it's funny because it's about how we communicate, right? I would not at this point get on TikTok and make videos with the hope that millions of people will watch me. But likewise, my mom will just pick up the phone and call somebody like a maniac. I would never do that without like texting them first. And it's just funny how what is familiar to us seems commonplace. It seems like it's the norm, kind of like what Alsop was talking about this week when we're picking music, and also the way about how in music theory, Ewell was talking about the fact that the white culture is the norm, and that's kind of how we look at it from our perspective. To me, it's the norm that you would text somebody before you would call them. And it'd be the norm that we wouldn't just get on and, have a conversation with a video camera. And so obviously, in order to move forward, I think in our own personal lives and as a society, we have to have these conversations and look at these norms and decide which ones do we want to keep, which ones are we okay with getting rid of. And I think that's how culture moves forward. But I feel like that process in music education has gotten stalled. That this idea that the same way of listening and the same philosophies, when they're even discussed in undergrad, right? And the same theoretical viewpoints, they're all just getting promulgated from one to the next. My teacher, their teacher, etc., etc. And I didn't even know this was an issue. How much of an issue is that I'm a 20-year teacher, and until I started this program, I didn't even realize that this was an issue. That's an issue. And so how do you combat something like that, where perhaps a large majority of our friends and fellow teachers perhaps aren't aware that the way that they're teaching could actually be doing harm, or perhaps in some case violence, to their students? And then secondly, how do you change that? And of course, that's the big debate, right? I don't know who it was. Somebody said, don't spend time on trying to change what is, just spend all of your time on building the new. And I totally agree with that. I'm a big fan of jumping in. I'm a beginner on projects. There's the beginning people, the middle people, and the closing people. I'm definitely a beginning person. I have a gazillion ideas, and it's somebody else's job to figure out how to implement those. But when it comes to changing the culture, the issue is that it's a closed system. So we could change it, for example, in elementary school, but then as soon as those kids went on to middle school or high school, if they're going on into a program that is viewing music education as the same standard repertoire and competitions, etc., then those kids, of course, will be at a disadvantage. Likewise, every step on up, or vice versa. You could change it at the university level, But then kids who have gone up through the system the entire time are going to really have a challenge. And so I feel like the entire thing needs to be changed simultaneously from the bottom on up. So, you've got these kids who are coming through, and then as soon as they go to the next level, that's ready. And of course, how do you do that? How do you do that? Especially when perhaps a certain percentage of our profession is not ready to do that. I saw this article about how in Sweden, they drove on, I don't know, I think it was the left side of the road, like in England. And they decided they wanted to drive on the right side of the road. And they had all of these ideas about how to make it happen. Certain parts of the country would do it, and then this and that. But of course, none of it worked because it's a closed system. They had to eventually pick a date and do all of this advertising and say, everybody, this is the date, and all of these, what do you call them? Where you go out and you try and tell things to people, public information. And then one day they said, okay, it's today. We all drive on the other side of the road. And of course, it was a huge disaster in a lot of ways, but now they drive on the other side of the road. And I just wish there was a way to do that in music education. I wish there was a way that at my little tiny community college, I could find a way to implement these other programs that I would love to implement, that so we don't have just band, choir, and orchestra, and handbells, that we could start doing things to get other people in from more of a community music perspective, perhaps. And then those kids would have somewhere else to go if they wanted to continue with that. I mean, I'm 30 minutes from ASU. I know ASU is a world-class, and U of A too, of course. They both have, world-class programs and a lot of ways that the kids can go up and do stuff. But you know what? If you want to be a performance major, guess what you're doing at ASU, right? It's the same everywhere because nobody wants to be the one who said, oh, whoops, I let that tradition go on my watch. Kids are so into video, but nobody's saying, I don't think they are, oh, they're not going to learn how to read and write. But what if they did? What if now that we have this amazing ability to do things on camera, what if we didn't need to read and write anymore, right? Right? Because that was the only way we could capture and hold on to information. And so what if the natural outcome of doing everything on video is 100 years from now, there's no more reading and writing. Everything is simply done on video. Do you want to be the person who okays that? Like in my program, if I say, okay, you know what, we're not going to have band, choir, and orchestra anymore. Well, my community college has been around for 50 years. And even though it's gone through a lot of hard times and shrunk down, and that's the reason I'm the only full-time professor, do I want to let those 3 programs die on my watch no matter what I'm about to build? But we don't have the funds or the faculty to build something else simultaneously. And so I feel like the big struggle here is, how do we do both? How do we build one while not being the other one who lets it die on their watch? And I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. I think that it's crucially important that we figure it out. I was so struck by one of the Rugelski readings from last semester, where he said basically, the reason we have to advocate so much in music education is because basically what we're doing isn't working. It's working for us, but it's not working necessarily for a large majority of the kids. And I think that kind of dovetails in with what Alsop was saying this week. He was saying something about the problem with choosing music is we think too much about it, and we're choosing and we're thinking so much about what works for us maybe, or about what our kids, need in regards to being exposed to a female composer or an Asian composer, rather than, is this type of music what they need at all? I don't know. I got 7 seconds left. This was an interesting experience. I'm sure that we'll get much more adept at doing this as we go. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Bye.